What's up, everybody? My name is Scott Paddock, and today we are going to dive deep into figuring out how to find your own personal sound on the saxophone. I have been thinking about how to do this video for a long time. It's something that comes up in my comments all the time. I get asked how I got my sound or how people can sound like me. I get people asking how do they find their own sound. I get all these questions about how do you find your sound. And it's a really tough thing to figure out how to teach in 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm going to break it down today into just the sound of the saxophone. So we're not going to talk about language meaning the notes that you're playing, like whether you're playing inside the changes, outside stuff, funky stuff, whatever. We're going to talk mainly about the way you sound on the saxophone. And I'm just going to give you 4 or 5 things to think about that's going to help you determine your own personal sound. And I'll tell you how it affects my sound, what I do with these 4 or 5 different things, and how it gives me the sound that I have. Now, before we dive into this, I want you to know that there is no right or wrong sound. Once you've got the basics of playing the saxophone down, whether you play smooth jazz or funky jazz or straight ahead or bebop or old school or anything, it doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong sound. It's whatever you hear. You've got everyone from Cannonball Adderley and Charlie Parker and John Coltrane to Boots Randolph and Kenny G and David Sanborn and Michael Brecker and Maceo Parker. Everyone sounds completely different. So I don't want you to think that there is one way that is better than the other. It's just whatever feels right and sounds right to you. So as we dive into this, don't think you have to sound this way or that way. And my advice and what I do is I steal a little bit from everybody. And then that's how I get my own personal sound. So I take some articulations from this guy or some sound projection from another guy. It just all depends on what you're into. Okay, so let's start with the most obvious place. Do you want your tone to be bright or dark? Bright or dark. You hear that all the time, especially when you're talking about mouthpieces and gear, because your gear can definitely determine whether you're going to be bright or dark. So if you're bright, that usually means that you are pushing your air really, really fast in a tight airstream through the center of your mouthpiece. I'm a bright saxophone player. My tone is definitely bright. It definitely cuts through. Most of the music I play is funk, pop, rock kind of stuff, and you have to be bright to cut through. A lot of straight ahead guys are on the darker side. So like I say, this is bright and this is dark. I'm way over here. A lot of like straight ahead guys are going to be kind of more in the middle, leaning towards the dark side. Leaning towards playing more dark on the saxophone. So that means their gear is going to be a little bit different. Their air is not going to be moving as fast. It's not going to be as centered. I can try and do an example of it, but my tone is so bright that I'm not going to sound dark no matter what I do. But here's me playing bright. And here's me trying to play a little darker, so I'm going to move my air slower. And instead of being like in a real tight airstream, I'm going to loosen it up. Here's bright. So you can probably hear a little bit of a difference there, but I'm naturally a bright player and my gear is set up to play really bright. So bright and dark can definitely be determined by gear. If you have a mouthpiece with a small chamber and a large baffle, a baffle means like a big slant in your mouthpiece. That's what I have. That's going to make your air move faster and you're going to have a brighter sound. If you have a medium or a large chamber mouthpiece and you don't have any baffle, you're definitely going to have a darker sound. So you can actually find that part of your sound or help find that part of your sound just through gear. So you have to decide, do I like bright? Do I like dark? A lot of that is going to depend on the type of music that you play. If you're a smooth jazz guy, you're a funk guy, like if you're Maceo, you're going to be really bright. If you're a smooth jazz guy, Dave Koz or one of those guys, you're going to be really bright. If you're a straight ahead guy like Charlie Parker or Cannonball Adderley or Phil Woods, one of those guys, you're going to have a darker sound. So the next subject that has a really big determination on your sound is the way you articulate. Articulate meaning like your dots and slurs and accents and all of that kind of stuff. We'll throw in some like embellishments and growling and that kind of stuff too, but it's going to be kind of the way you present the note. So I typically articulate really strong. I have a really strong, crisp articulation. That's my personal style, is bright and strong and articulated. But a lot of guys can go all the way to almost no articulation. I personally don't like that sound, but again, all this stuff about sound is all about personal preference. I prefer to have the notes separated more, but there's all the way, again, from tonguing really hard to barely tonguing at all, and you've got guys all the way in between. Like you have Dexter Gordon, he tongued really hard and really separated his notes. You've got a smooth jazz guy, Gerald Albright. He tongues hard and he really separates his notes. It's very strong articulation. Same with Maceo Parker. On the bebop side of things, Cannonball really articulated his stuff. But then you have guys like John Coltrane, who wasn't super articulate. You have guys like Stan Getz, who isn't super articulate, but he'll have like pop notes. But like most of his stuff is kind of like flowing together. Same with Joe Henderson. His notes are going to be flying together. A more modern guy, you have a guy like Chad Lefkowitz Brown, Chad LB. He definitely uses articulation, but he's playing lines so fast that his notes aren't super articulated. So it just depends on what you like and, again, what you prefer. So I'm going to play a song standard, and I'm going to do it a couple different ways with articulation, and you'll hear the difference in what I'm talking about. So this is There Will Never Be Another You, and I'm going to really strongly articulate it. Now I'm going to do it with way less articulation. Again, one way isn't more correct than the other. It just depends on what you like. So with the strong articulation, then you can lighten it a little bit. You can lighten it even more. And then you get rid of your tongue almost altogether. Again, it just all comes down to what you like. And then you got guys like Boots Randolph and like a bunch of rock and roll guys who do a bunch of growls and everything. Now, I'm not going to growl on There Will Never Be Another You because it just doesn't fit. But you have guys whose style is this. And again, if that's what you're into, if you want to play a solo that sounds like a Pink Floyd saxophone solo, or if you want to sound like Boots Randolph, or you want to sound like a rock and roll dude, Blue Lou Marini, that's how you're going to play. You're going to put that rasp and growl on it. So we have touched on how bright and how dark you play. We have talked about how you articulate. Now let's talk about where you place the notes. In other words, you can place the notes directly on the beat. You can place the notes a little bit behind the beat, or you can kind of like float on top. I call that meandering, which probably isn't like the nicest term, but that's what it sounds like to me, where it's not locked in time. You can play in front of the beat, but that isn't done very often outside of Latin style music. Here are a couple of examples of playing on the beat, behind the beat, and then over the beat, meandering over the beat. So here is on the beat. This is, again, There Will Never Be Another You. 1, 2, 1, 2, Everything is completely locked in there. All the notes are on the beat. Everything is lining up. This time, I'm going to play it behind the beat. So the time is still going to be strong, but just the notes are going to be a little bit late. Not late as like played in the wrong place, but just a little behind the beat. 1, 2, 1, 2, Again, the notes are still, like the tempo is the same. I'm just playing a little bit behind the beat instead of really locking it in. This time, I'm going to do both. I'm going to lock it in, and then I'm going to get behind the beat. Take a listen. Again, it's locking it in, getting behind the beat, whichever you prefer. Now, here is playing over top of the beat. So with this way, you're not, again, you're in time, but you're not locked into the time, but you're not behind the beat. You're just kind of playing over top of it. So you hear a lot of old school jazz guys doing this. This isn't my favorite style, but again, it all depends on what you hear and what you like. So this is what This is what playing over top of the time would sound like. 1, 2, So you can hear the notes are all in time, like it's fitting what's going on, but they're just kind of like shifting their way back and forth. So when you're developing your own style, you want to decide, Do I play locked in time? Do I play behind the beat? Do I kind of meander over top of the beat? Now, when you have your own style, you don't have to only do one thing. I do all of these things, but my main, like if you had to ask me what I played the most, my main thing is like locked in, super articulated, bright sound. The last thing I want to talk about is vibrato. Vibrato is actually way more important than you would think when it comes to determining your sound. In other words, how fast your vibrato is, where you place it. So if I was just gonna do a regular old jazz vibrato, I'll do it on Summertime. Typical, I hold the note and then I speed up the vibrato as I'm going. If I was gonna play it in a more funk style, it's similar, but the vibrato gets going faster and deeper. So listen to the jazz and then the funk. Funk. So those sound completely different. Now, if I was going to do it more like Paul Desmond style, he has like a classical jazz sound. The vibrato starts quicker and sooner. Again, all three of those things can really drastically change the way you sound. It puts you into a genre of playing. So, and again, none of them are correct and none of them are incorrect. It all comes down to what you hear and what you want to play and what you want to sound like. Now, a lot of this comes down to the genre of music you play. I mainly play funk, rock, pop, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to have my style is going to kind of fit more into that style of playing. So it's going to be more articulated. It's going to be brighter so it can get over top of electric musicians, electric bass, electric guitars, heavy drums. So it's going to be brighter. It's going to be more articulated. If I was playing jazz, I would have a different style of articulation. You're going to kind of be fitting into a more acoustic group, so you don't need to play quite as strong, as loud, and your articulations don't need to necessarily be as strong. But again, if I'm playing a jazz gig, I'm going to use a lot of my funk stuff that I would use on a jazz gig. And if I'm playing a funk gig, I'll probably use some of my jazz stuff that I play and put it on the funk gig. That's part of finding your own sound, is being able to kind of develop all these things into one set of tools that you can kind of keep interchanging. Now, when we're talking about genres, like a lot of people hate on Kenny G, and I probably did a lot too when I was younger, but Kenny G has found his sound. When you hear Kenny G, you know that's Kenny G, and he found the thing that makes him sound like Kenny G. So I'm happy for him. He found his sound, and his sound actually has made him a whole lot of money. You listen to someone like Cannonball Adderley, like he took the bebop language and put some blues and some grit and some south and some soul on it. And that's how he got his sound. You take Coltrane, he kind of flipped the whole thing upside down. And then you take someone like Michael Brecker, and he took what Coltrane did and he kind of cleaned it up a little bit and made it a little bit stronger. So you just kind of keep finding what you like, and you keep messing with it and switching around and playing with it until you find your own sound. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that all instrument players make is they only pay attention to their own instrument when they're looking for their sound. So I learned how to phrase my melodies really well by digging so deep into Ella Fitzgerald. I love the way she sings a standard. When you hear me play a melody, it's going to sound very similar to the way that Ella Fitzgerald would sing it. In my area, I live in Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. I live in Baltimore, and I grew up around here, but not in Baltimore. There are a ton of super funky bass players who slap bass. You hear that in my playing. I heard slap bassing all the time. I thought it was super cool. There's a guy from Spyro Gyra named Scott Ambush who would do all these crazy slap funk bass solos, and I kind of figured out ways to make that sound happen on my saxophone. So steal from bass players, steal from trumpet players, steal from whoever you think sounds good. Try to figure out how to get that on your saxophone. Now, this is just the beginning. We're just scratching the surface of how to find your sound. But if you think about these 4 subjects, these 4 topics, this is definitely going to get you headed in the right direction. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. If you now understand a little bit more about how to find your own personal sound, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, hit that little bell for notifications, like the video, and leave me some comments. Comments help my videos get placed better and get more views, so the more comments, the better. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks a lot.